What's up guys, Justin here with the CGEssentials.com. So in today's video, we're going to check out a brand new add-on design to help you create clouds inside of Blender. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. Okay, so Real Cloud is an add-on from Casey Sheep. And as of the time of this recording, it's one of the top add-ons on the Blender market. So I wanted to go ahead and download it and give it a try and just kind of give you an idea what it's capable of. So it's really a couple different things. So first off, it's a cloud generator. Basically what it is it's a tool that allows you to generate clouds based on geometry inside of your models. So in addition, if you get the Pro version, it also comes with an asset library of 200 VDB clouds. And so as of the time of this recording, this has over 700 sales with an average rating of 5 stars. So people seem to be liking what it's doing. So you can either generate clouds using the geometry node generator, or you can use the cloud asset library. So let's kind of take a look at the way that this works. There's also a link to a getting started page, which will kind of walk you through how you can get everything set up. But when you first download this, it's going to come with two things. It's going to come with an add-on, which you need to install, as well as a larger assets file, which you need to bring into your asset browser. So let's jump over into Blender and take a look. So first thing you want to do is you want to go into your edit preferences. And under add-ons, you need to go find the add-on file that it comes with and install it inside of your preferences right here. Then you need to click on the option for enable. So you just want to check the box right here. In addition, you also need to go into your file paths. You need to add the asset library. So you just click on plus, and then you use this option right here to go find that asset library. So then that's going to show up in your asset browser down below. So let's take a look at what this can do. So one thing to note is there is a documentation page. You're going to receive a link to that when you purchase the add-on, so you can follow that and get in here and get more information. So there's information about getting started, as well as how you can use the add-on and how you can use the VDB library. And so one thing to note about all of this is because this is using volumes, what that means is this can be a little bit performance intensive. So it is definitely worth going through and reading the information about the VDB assets library, and specifically where you should, or what you should set up the different settings to be to get the best results. So you are going to want to go through and make sure that you've set up your volumes setting inside of your rendering. The other thing to note about this is because this is using volumes, it is a cycles only add-on, meaning you can't use this in Eevee because Eevee doesn't support the way that the volumes work. So just be aware that this is a cycles only situation. You're not going to be able to use it with Eevee. But first off, let's take a look at the functions we can use in order to convert objects to clouds, and then we can take a look at the asset library. So what we want to do is when we first install this, if you tap the N letter key on your keyboard and then go over here to the right, you're going to get a little tab called Real Cloud. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow you to come in here and you can select an object and note how you can click on the option to convert to cloud. And so that's going to do exactly what it sounds like. It's going to take your object and convert it to a cloud. Now notice this took this object and it made it way bigger. You could definitely come in here and reduce the size, right? So if I type in a 1, for example, then it's going to reduce the size of that object to 1. You can also adjust the seed in here. So that's going to kind of randomize the cloud that's created around your mesh. But notice how this generally is maintaining the shape of the monkey head that I had in here, or the Suzanne that I had in here. Now note that you can adjust things like level of detail using the slider right here, right? So the higher or lower you set these objects, the more detail you're going to get in here. So notice how if I set my detail accuracy 2 and 1 very low, then it's going to give me lower detail that more matches up with my actual geometry in here. While if I make this higher, right, if I add more detail accuracy in here, it's going to add more into your object in order to make it more of a cloud. Now, notice how this is basically just kind of a black box right here. That's because I'm in material preview mode, and the volumes that we're using are only going to look like clouds when we jump over into cycles. So if I go from my material preview right here to cycles, notice how I can see that this is more of a cloud situation. And you can use these sliders to adjust the amount of detail that's in here. So depending on the amount of detail, this can follow along with your shape more or less depending on the settings that you have in here. Okay, and so what this does is gives you a fair amount of control, right? So let's say that I was to do a Shift A and add like some metaballs in here, right? So I'm just going to duplicate this and duplicate it again, and I'm just going to generate kind of a general cloud shape. So something like this, I could scale it, whatever you want. You could generate this whole cloud shape. Then if you were to come in here, take that object and convert it to a mesh, and then click on convert to cloud. And again, note how it does size this up. I'm going to size it back down, but you can use this in order to really quickly generate a cloud using that general mesh in here. And then if I was to jump over to rendered mode right here, you've got that full cloud volume in here. Okay, so one other thing to note is at the bottom of that section is a remesh slider. What the remesh slider is going to do is the lower the remesh resolution, the smaller this is going to subdivide the mesh in order to create your cloud. So what that means is if you have a higher remesh resolution, you can set this in here. That's going to make your performance better, but your mesh won't be as dense, right? Where over here on the right, you've got a lower remesh resolution. So what that's doing is that's generating more geometric detail in here. So you can use that to create more geometric detail. Just know that that can be very computer and processor intensive. Notice how there's a note in the documentation saying users with lower CPU performance can adjust it to a value higher than 0.5. So again, just note that the more detail you're creating, the slower your computer is going to be, which really isn't different from any other add-on or tool in Blender. Okay, so now let's talk about how to use the asset library that comes with this. Because if you remember, we installed the asset library. And so now if we go into the asset browser, we look under the whatever folder you created for that when you first installed this, you're going to have options for all of these different kinds of clouds. Right? I think there's supposed to be like 200 in total. I definitely haven't gone through and counted all of these. But basically these are kind of VDB presets, right? So you can bring them in, and as presets, they're going to be pre-set up as clouds. Now, one thing that you may want to do is you may want to come over here and click on the option for Cycles Auto Setup. And so what that's going to do is when you click on Cycles Auto Setup, it's going to come in here and it's going to set some of those things that were in the documentation, right? So things like if you go into your light paths, it sets your transparency to that value of 1024, which they recommend. I'm going to go ahead and switch this to GPU render, but let's go ahead and let's drag one of these clouds in here. Now, one thing to note about these clouds is they come in really big, right? Which I'm not really sure. It seems like every time I've ever used volumes like this, they always come in really big. I'm not sure why that is. Probably because that's the actual real world size of clouds. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scale this down a little bit so I'm not dealing with clipping issues. Because I don't want this clipped out in the background. Now, you can go into like your view and set a longer clipping distance, and you can set the same thing with your camera. We're not going to worry too much about that for right now. But let's go ahead and let's jump over into cycles and see what this does. Know how if you jump into cycles just like this with nothing added in your scene, you're not actually going to see anything, right? That's because these actually act as a real world volume, and they're going to react to the light that's in the scene. So what that means is there's no lighting in here for the cloud volume to interact with. So I'm just going to do a Shift A, and just for example's sake, I'm going to add a sun. Here, notice how when I add a sun, this is now going to react to the real world lighting in the scene, like this. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bump the power of this light up just so you can kind of see how this reacts to a stronger light in the scene. And you may even hear it in the background, but with a volume like this, you are going to see a fair amount of performance hit because it is doing more of a heavy duty kind of calculation. So just be aware of that. You don't want to like overload the number of clouds in here. Like maybe a couple ought to work just fine for you. But you've got this big library of different cloud types in here. So they're all going to react to the light a little bit differently. Like some of them are denser, right? Some of them are less dense. So you can bring these in and generate a bunch of different looks with your clouds, depending on what you're trying to create in your scene. And so if you tap the in key and you go back into the real cloud settings, notice that you can adjust the cloud settings in your scene. Now, one thing to note about this is this seems to be adjusting the VDB values in the scene overall, so it doesn't seem to be adjusting the individual clouds, but you can use this to adjust things like the density of the clouds, the way that they scatter light, as well as adjusting things like the ambient occlusion, which is going to give you more contrast between your darks and your lights. So you can use this to adjust all of those different things in your scene, as well as giving you the ability to adjust the color of your clouds. So you can use these sliders as to really dial in your scene. All right, so that's where I'm ending this video. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about the cloud generator. For adding quick clouds, I think it works pretty well. I will note that the volumes are a little heavy, but you should kind of expect that when you're rendering with cycles and volumes. Anyway, but leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.